They'll be unmatched, unclassified, historic, and as popular as Long Island wrestling itself. In the unveiling of what will be billed as one of the top high school wrestling talk shows in the nation, we'll bring you the legends, the coaches, the perspective, and the 0 to 100 wrestling matchups that change the gravity of the sport in the Mike and Mike Show.
You know, I want to look at the stats. I don't want to look at emotion.
I don't know what you're looking at. I mean, just simply said is that you guys do have Arnold Schwarzenegger and Kerry McCoy. That guy did unbelievable things. He is Atlas. You put him up. He's carrying the world on his back, and it shouldn't detract from any of their accomplishments, but we had a bad group of dudes who were able to be bad groups of dudes because of the bad group of dudes that came before us. But with that said, Mike, my crew never loses to your crew. That's not how it goes.
Welcome to the premiere of the Mike and Mike Show.
Mike, you know, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about COVID. You know, this year is one of the first times, if not the first time in a long time, that we potentially might not have a New York State tournament. You know, there are colleges wrestling in the state of New York. There are lots of states that are wrestling around the country. But where I am on Long Island, you know, wrestling is all but canceled. I mean, there is certainly a hope that it could continue, but right now it's postponed, what we'll call indefinitely. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
I mean, I'd like to see American ingenuity come back, and that we start seeing, you know, some more private events. Jason Layton is a great example of what I'd like to see most coaches or all coaches on Long Island in the country emulate. He's, you know, not waiting for the government to give him a stamp of approval, and he's, you know, creating momentum and doing things that are, you know, at one point thought to be kind of silly, and they're now ahead of the curve. And, you know, Jason Layton is a great example of what I think has to happen. I mean, the state tournament being lost is by no question a terrible, terrible, awful thing for, you know, these teens and these youth and the coaches and the communities that are involved. But at the same time, like, I think that we have to try to be solution oriented. And we've waited long enough for, you know, those in power to give us some answers. And, you know, as far as is concerned, you know, another guy is Frank Papalizio. He's holding that state tournament right now. And I know it's not the same thing, you know, that everybody wants, but I can tell you that if it's done right, the college coaches are going to look at it. You know, they're still going to look at Fargo. We're going to hope that's going to go. And more importantly than anything else is, you know, everybody paddles their own canoe. There's a lot of people there's a lot of stories out there of people getting to college, whether it's Division 2, 3, NAIA, or otherwise, that became something that, you know, of themselves. So just because this year's lost, the state tournament is lost, doesn't mean that all is lost. And I'd like to, you know, hear less about, you know, this being a bad thing and more, you know, solution oriented.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of those sentiments. You know, as wrestlers, right? We have ingenuity. We think on the fly. We're creative, right? You know, think about a match where it's 1-1 and there's 10 seconds left, and you've tried your go-to, whether it's your high crotch or your low single, your go-to move on top or even bottom, and you couldn't score. And you have 10 seconds left, and you have to find a way, right? So I think that lends itself to what you articulated in terms of Jason Layton. I think he's one of the most creative folks in our sport, you know, in terms of his wrestling system, his war zone, and the fact that he's going out to other areas and creating opportunities. So I totally agree with you. I think, as you mentioned, you know, Frank Papalizio is certainly a pioneer. You know, he's the brother of Pat Papalizio, who's the head coach at NC State. You know, they're both from upstate New York. But Frank, as you mentioned, has created, we'll call it an unofficial, official New York State tournament. And what's exciting about it is he's utilizing criteria to go to the tournament. In other words, it's not just an open tournament with anyone with X number of dollars can sign up and go. He's utilizing as best as he can similar criteria, you know, as you would qualify for a typical state tournament. You know, and I've been following on it, and he's someone that I think that we'll probably bring on the show at a later date. But, you know, he's someone that's been successful at every level, and I think it's ingenious, and I think it's being very well received. So I'm certainly excited to see that. As far as the potential of the sport being lost, I have mixed feelings, right? I want everyone to be safe. I understand some of the decisions are made at the top from the governor and sectional chairs and New York State chairs. So I get it. These are tough decisions. Do I understand the decisions? Yes. Am I disappointed in the current situation? Yes, also, right? So I think that there are lots of wrestlers that are finding a way to obviously stay in shape, to hone their skills. There are other opportunities around the country, as we talked about, in addition to the Jason Laytons and the Frank Popolizios. But look, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't cover that. This is it's a little bit of a
remiss. Time out. What is remiss? Let's get what's the home definition here for. I think that you guys at home, you might not know this, but Mike likes to say big words and impress people. So I just want to get the word remiss. I know what it means. I use it in a sentence, but only because, I've been big time by people like Mike Vetrano. So remiss, the definition is lacking care or attention to duty, negligent. So if you want to go back with your big words, not that anybody didn't know what remiss mean, but you could have said lacking your care or attention to duty or negligent, but you didn't use remiss. And so continue.
Well, my answer to that is, look, I never talk down to my audience, in this case, my co-host. So I think you may need to step up your game in terms of your SAT vocabulary. But we carry on.
I'm going to do my best. I am going to do my best. Believe me, I am, get my word of the day in my email. I'm studying up on my public transport routes, so on and so forth. But yeah, Frank Popolizio is, the guy is consistent. Jason Layton is ahead of his time, and he's coming from nowhere but a good place. So yeah, it's really exciting to be a wrestling fan right now. It's unfortunate that the states aren't going on. But, as, we're alluding to, we're going to have a guest on that's going to talk about, having the unfortunate situation that a lot of these kids are going through. And it sounds like he turned out to be pretty successful. So again, some things are lost, and those are called battles. And, other things are won, and that's called the war. And I think that everyone's going to be all right in time.
Wrestling, a sport measured by technique, mental toughness, discipline, and persistence. But it also brings children with all skill levels interested in the sport in droves when there's great coaching. Team Porcelli Training Center in Iowa is at the epicenter of great wrestling. Being one of the best youth clubs in the Midwest, the center has a deep understanding for community and wellness. At the top of their game, they may be in Iowa, but they have nationwide appeal and a national model for success. Run by U.S. Veterans National Champion Anthony Porcelli, Porcelli's vision and mission of the center is to build children from the ground up with their wellness in mind. To Porcelli, it doesn't matter if the children are novice wrestlers or state champions. His goal is to build character, create a positive, nurturing, and spirited environment, and to produce respectful ambassadors in his community. The training center benefits people from all ages, ranging from the average fitness workout to mixed martial arts, specialized youth training, and self-defense. Porcelli Training Center, where excellence is the standard.
It's a great segue to our first guest on our inaugural show, what I hope to be many shows, is someone that not only was a great wrestler, highly accomplished wrestler, has been extremely successful in his wrestling career, and that's Jason Cohen. Jason Cohen was a 1992 graduate of West Islip High School. He was a 3-time county place winner. He was a county champ as a junior, Section 11 county champ as a senior. As a junior, he was All-State, and his senior year, he was a New York State champion in heavyweight. And I believe that he has a compelling story to tell. As we talked about, we're unfortunately going through this COVID pandemic, and I'm going to let Jason articulate his story a little bit more in detail. But it simply said, at that time in 1992, during the state tournament, there was a potential measles outbreak, and there was some discussion about actually canceling the tournament, specific weight classes. And Jason Cohen, instead of wrestling in front of thousands of fans and family and media, he ended up wrestling in an obscure high school with no fans, with just the referee mechanic, the scorekeeper, the timer, the two coaches, and Jason Cohen. And again, he found a way to persevere, to win that match, to become a state champion. And not only that, he's also went on to he was one of the most successful and heralded athletic trainers at numerous places, most recently at Islip High School. Islip, for those of you who don't know, is one of the most consistent winning programs in New York State. And now just recently, he's an assistant middle school principal. So not only did he find a way to win that state title during a potential measles outbreak, they were potentially going to cancel the tournament. He went on to have a very successful athletic training career. And now he's a assistant middle school coach at Islip High School. And that's Jason Cohen. Folks, here we have Jason Cohen, a former West Islip Lion, a New York State champion, multiple-time All-State, 3-time All-County, 4-time league champ, a former high-level athletic trainer at Islip, and now, I believe, a assistant middle school coach in Islip School. Thank you. Welcome to our show. Welcome to the first show. I'm Mike Vetrano along with Mike Torriero, and we really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on.
Jason, great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Mike.
Jason, one of the topics, obviously that everyone is talking about is COVID, right? And, the potential that we're going to lose our wrestling season. There's already, unfortunately, the New York State tournament has been canceled. And when we were talking about candidly lining up guests for the show, you were one of the first folks that we thought about. Because it's kind of almost folklore, but what you went through, right? And I'd love to, hear about your story in a little bit more detail. So again, just to recap, for those of you who don't know, Jason Cohen was a New York State champion in 1992. And during that tournament, there was a potential measles outbreak. And typically the tournament is held in a big arena with thousands and thousands of fans and media and family and coaches and just a whole bunch of hoopla. And Jason, and again, I want you to tell the story, but Jason ended up wrestling that finals match at an obscure high school with just his coaches, his opposing coaches, the wrestler, and the scorekeeper and the referee. So Jason, I'd love to hear about, you were someone who was all state, you participated in the state tournament as a junior, so you experienced thousands of fans, and then you ended up wrestling in again, obscure high school during that time. Can you kind of walk us through what that was like? First of all, walk us through, was there a time where you thought maybe, I'm not going to get that opportunity to wrestle in that state final, and kind of walk us through that process?
Well, just getting to the state tournament that year was a challenge for me. I was sick. I had bronchitis for the whole county tournament, and my doctor had me on Tylenol with codeine, so that was a challenge in itself. Thankfully, that year we had a 2-week lag in between the tournament. And, I being a 17-year-old kid at the time, I really didn't put much thought into it. I knew the outbreak was a potential, problem up there. It was from Glens Falls, and everybody in the 155 and 250 pound weight class had to provide measles vaccination proof. So when I, I really didn't think about it. I took it one match at a time. And then when I realized, okay, I'm going into the finals, and now what? So it was a surreal experience. I ended up, our coaches all decided we were going to wrestle early. Semifinals were over. We agreed to meet at 3:00 in the afternoon behind the Onondaga War Memorial. And we showed up there ready to go. They packed about 8 of us in a police paddy wagon. They had us I was sitting knee to knee against Jason Spector, the guy I was about to wrestle for the state championship. And they took us over to a closed high school gymnasium. They wouldn't let my parents in. They wouldn't even tell my parents which school we were going to. So they couldn't even come and hang out outside and wait for the results. So what did it feel like when you won with a, was there a sense of,
a lot of winning? Were you just relieved? What's the sense of feeling? I mean, it's like if a tree fell in the woods and there's no one around to see it or hear it, what happens?
It was still a state championship. The spectators weren't there, but I know what that title means, and it meant a lot to me.
Well, Jason, let me interject for 1 second, because I'm meeting you for the first time, but I started wrestling as a peewee I was 4 years old, and the picture of you above Chad Hankin in the county tournament with your hat on do you know what I'm talking about?
I still have all those pictures out there somewhere stored away. Yeah.
My goodness, I never met you, but you were, when I tell people about wrestling and what they got to do to go from a team to a program, I talk about superheroes, and you were a superhero for me from 1986, or 1992, whenever it was, when that happened, man. It was unbelievable, because we used to look up and, who's the guy that you want to be? You want to be the biggest guy that there is. And you were up there with, of course, the hat was distinguishable, but yeah, a state title is a state title. And for us from Suffolk County, there are superheroes. We looked up to you. There's a lot of us.
Thank you, Mike. And I never looked at it like that. There's been a long history of amazing wrestlers that have come from Suffolk County. That year up at the States, I had the pleasure of wrestling with one of the greatest teams up there. I mean, I forget the number. I think we took 11 state titles that year. And I could be off on that. I don't remember exactly, but there was some Kerry McCoy, Derek Thomas, John Lang, there was just a whole crew of great guys, and they were just good guys to be with.
Yeah, it's arguably was probably something we could debate, but in my opinion, it's arguably the best, sectional team ever. I mean, there's so many top-notch guys that not only won state titles, I think did a lot of things after college. What I have a question for you is, and this is some of the details that I never really understood. So you wrestled the outer bracket, the quarters, the semis. Did you wrestle that in the arena, or did you wrestle that separate in the high school? That's a part I didn't really understand.
That was all in the arena. It was Jason Spector and the 155 pounder from Glens Falls. There were two different high schools in Glens Falls. Those two guys wrestled all their matches in a closed high school gymnasium. So everybody was getting shuttled back and forth. I was fortunate enough to have to, I didn't meet up with Jason until the finals.
Now, had you ever, out of curiosity, I think you took third or fourth as a junior, right?
I took a fourth, yes.
Fourth. Now, had you ever wrestled, whether it's during regular season or in the off season, had you ever wrestled him before?
Never wrestled him before. Back in the early 90s, there were tournaments around, but guys didn't travel like they do nowadays, traveling all up and down the East Coast, hitting a lot of these big tournaments. It wasn't as prominent back then. A lot of guys would wrestle, they'd go into a Greco or freestyle, locally, and that was really the extent of it.
You were a multi-sport athlete in high school, is that correct?
Yes.
So what were you doing in the fall, winter, spring? I mean, obviously you were wrestling in the wintertime, but what were you doing in those off seasons? You grew up on the South Shore of Long Island, correct?
Yes.
So what were summers spent like getting ready, I'd assume, for football? Was there a lot of, as a heavyweight, your football coaches are probably pulling you and telling you to eat and lift and do some things, and the wrestling coach maybe, might not be as persuasive to the heavyweight, linebacker, fullback, whatever the case is.
For me, my family life growing up, I came from a blue collar family, and everything was a struggle. So football season was football season, wrestling season was wrestling season. Did a little bit of off season stuff. I used to go down and work out with Jumper down in Bayshore, and Mike Porcelli used to beat me up quite a bit.
He beat most people up, right? Yeah.
So I would work out down there a little bit, a couple nights here and there. And then really, spring was hitting the weights and finishing up, the year of school in summertime. From the time I was 12 years old, I was working manual labor all summer long, for a variety of things, and then hitting, preseason football workouts over the summer and lifting. And that was it. And really, I was able to maintain. I played football at 260, and a week in the room, and I was on weight.
That's fantastic. I could tell you that I have friends that played football against you. I know your big rival was the North Babylon Bulldogs, right? The West Side Sublimes and the North Babylon Bulldogs. We could probably do a whole show on that in terms of that rivalry. But I know that you were not only feared but revered. I believe you were a lineman, right? And you were certainly feared on the gridiron, and obviously that translated to the wrestling arena. One more question, and then I want to get your perspective on things. Is Again, was there ever a moment that you didn't actually think that the state finals were going to happen? Again, that's what I'm hating. Or is it always going to be executed in that way?
Like I said earlier, maybe I was naive to it, or I was just a 17-year-old, and I was just wrestling along. I didn't know, I guess, the extent of it. They were just concerned at that time. They were just trying to keep spectators from Glens Falls from coming to the War Memorial and possibly creating a statewide epidemic. I don't know if there was ever any talk of canceling.
Nobody was tweeting about that back in 1992.
No, there were no tweets flying around.
No social media. A lot. You're a very humble guy, and I've known you for a while. Obviously I've known of you as a athletic trainer. I know that you moved on. You're now an assistant principal, but you were a trainer at obviously one of the most successful programs in the Islip Buccaneers. So I'd love to glean your perspective on the whole situation. Now, fast forward, you went through measles. You were champion, you state, multiple time all-state, state champion. What's your perspective looking at it, not from a lens of an athlete, but from the lens, I know that you were an athletic trainer at a couple of places, I believe in college too, I believe Malloy College, right? So what's from the lens of an athletic trainer and now as an administrator, I think you probably have a different lens. What's your thoughts on wrestling being able to continue? Real quick, I think wrestling is one of those sports that we are positioned to get through this, right? We go through weight checks, hydration checks, skin checks, nail checks, probably some other checks that I'm forgetting about, right? So we go through all these different processes before we get on the mat, right, Mike? And so I'd love to hear your perspective from an administrator and from a top level athletic trainer.
I think right now what we're going through, it's not just locally, but globally. There's definitely a lot of challenges out there. It's very polarizing. There's a great big division as to the severity of the virus. If it's real, if it's not real, is it really as bad as they say? I know people who have lost their lives to it. It does impact people in many different ways. So I understand what they're trying to do and trying to keep everybody safe, but it needs to be a balancing act, because we need to take into account the social and emotional well-being of our wrestlers and all of our youth. I think the isolation is having an impact on our children. And to be honest, being an administrator now in a school, it's taking its toll on the adults as well.
Right. So I think, like you said, it's a balancing act. I don't know, Mike, if you had any kind of closing thoughts, but I do. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I have some thoughts on where the direction is, and I guess people are dying. That is happening. It is a real thing. So you can't be ignorant to what's going on there, and I agree. I like the color gray. It's my favorite color because it makes sense of black and it makes sense of white. And so when I hear people screaming on one side, I can have some empathy and put my shoes and go, yeah, I really understand. And I'm able to, in my own head, at least go to the other side and really understand. And the other thing that I want to say to it is, I think it always comes back to, as an administrator, as a CFO, as where the buck stops with you, and along the chain of commands, probably you, Mr. Cohen, is the liability in which you were negligent knowing what's out there. And I'm very, very worried. I am personally worried that wrestling is going to be dependent and hoping that schools are going to say that they want to come back. But after this whole thing is done, quite possibly the CFO starts looking at the books and seeing the electric bill is, half of what it was, and that the liability claim now to have close combative sports like wrestling is 3 times of what it was. And that doesn't make sense on a budgetary standpoint. And that, wrestling, we love it, but it's going to have to take way of other privatized sports. Do you think that that's something that may happen, or should we not worry?
My own personal thoughts, for many years, I've been an athletic trainer and I've worked with several different athletic directors and developed some pretty close working relationships. And I've spent some time looking at the numbers and the breakdowns. And I think as educated professional people, we can look at the benefits that these programs have for our student athletes. And when we actually break down the numbers, we're spending dollars a day per child to have them participate in these after school activities, these sports, these clubs, whatever it might be. Not, I know we're looking and we're talking wrestling right now, but across the board, I think, for a football team, a wrestling team, it's, $6-7 a day per child. You can't hire a babysitter for that.
True.
So to ask your community to support that and give these kids an outlet and have them involved, I can't see organizations and schools and looking to take that way.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just, again, I don't think they should. I think there's intangibles. I mean, obviously we want to see wrestling, back on the mats. I guess I'm just trying to understand. I think that Mike is too, is we've been sitting on the sideline for long enough. And, should wrestling be taking a look at, doing things like we mentioned this guy, Frank Popolizio, he started to host his own, select state tournament in place of, what's going on. And, just so, the community, if anybody's listening, I don't know how many people listen to this show, but just a concerted effort to, understand what the timeline is so everyone can, manage the expectation, which is, the most important thing in business and life and, otherwise on what's going on, because we've just been sitting and waiting. And I think people want to start doing. And if it's waiting for answers for somebody, maybe it's better that people get together and find a matted, open space at a church and lay down a mat, if then I can't wrestle at their high school.
Yeah, just to echo those sentiments, as I said before, if anyone can do it, wrestlers can do it. I joked about all the different checks and I got a smile from you, Jason. I mean, we go through so many different things, and I think wrestlers we're built to persevere. So, with that being said, Jason, you are our first guest on our first show, and it's been my honor and our pleasure to talk to you. You are a true gentleman of the sport, and the way you carry yourself is just epitomizes what it means to be a wrestler and a professional. And I'm proud to know you, and I'm very appreciative that you're on the show, that you came on the show with us.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate you guys having me on tonight. It definitely, it was my honor, and I'm proud to say that I was one of your first guests out here, or on your first program. I wish you most success and all the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.
You want the best of high school wrestling? Long Island Wrestling Association's website brings you the best. Wrestling is one of the toughest blue-collar sports. The sport has tens of thousands of followers, and at the center of it all is the Long Island Wrestling Association, measuring the gravity of the sport. In 2002, National Hall of Fame wrestling inductee Steve Meehan created the #1 source for wrestling news in New York State. With contributors like Long Island Sports Hall of Fame inductee and historian Andy Slawson, the site is the most comprehensive wrestling website in the country for high school wrestling news. With in-depth analysis, entertaining facts, forums, and trending topics, this site has a treasure trove of historic high school wrestling information, with records dating back to the 1930s. There is no better source for high school wrestling coverage. Long Island Wrestling Association, keeping the wrestling world up to speed.
I want to welcome Iron Max Gallagher, the pride of Bayport Blue Point, Mr. Phantom himself. certainly one of the stars in Long Island and New York State. You know, we have Mr. Max Gallagher from Bayport. You know, just for those of you who don't know, Max Gallagher as a seventh grader was third in Section 11. As an eighth grader, was third in New York State at 106. He was a finalist at 113 as a freshman. He's currently ranked on pretty much every ranking service. He's ranked, I believe, top 25 in Win Magazine, in Intermat. He's ranked top 100 overall sophomores pound for pound in the United States of America. And he's the number one ranked sophomore in New York State. That's Mr. Max Gallagher. Welcome to the show. We appreciate having you.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
How big is your neck? Do you have a tape measure over there? This guy's
you have an incredibly sized neck.
I get that comment a lot. Yeah. I don't know how big exactly.
Yeah, I wear two collars to try to, pull off what you're doing naturally. So, we'll have to get your mom and dad to give you a measurement, send it to us after the show.
All right.
Probably serves you well. So, Max, I know that we may or may not have a season. Obviously, I know you've been keeping yourself busy in various tournaments and stuff. What weight class were you? I know you were at 113 last year. What weight class have you thought about that? Would you go, assuming we had a season?
I would probably go to 120, depending on if there was state tournament or not, and if there was a season but no states, I wouldn't really try to cut as much just for small matches.
Now, how much Max, do you weigh walking around, Max?
I'd say 132.
Okay.
So Max, I've been around you since probably before you remember third and fourth grade, certainly in the Bayport room, and even as a third or fourth grader, you were drilling like a high school kid. As an eighth and ninth grader, you're drilling like a college athlete. I think that if I'm not mistaken, you've kind of morphed into more of a square stance. But when I think of Max Gallagher, I think of a hard worker that epitomizes a wrestler, is a stand-up guy who's well-spoken and really just epitomized what we're trying to do here in Suffolk County Wrestling. I know Mike has some questions about what you're looking to do currently and in the future.
Yeah, so Max, I guess I didn't know what the heck I was thinking about as, even a college sophomore, no less a high school sophomore. So I'd imagine that if I were to put myself in your shoes, that you're probably batting off, a few different girls, and that life over in Bayport is going well, but you're probably thinking about nothing but wrestling and running in the morning time, getting as many workouts as you can, get your body as limber and as flexible as possible, and just kind of wrapping around wrestling. So, what is the mindset of, you're very fortunate, you're a sophomore. What's a mindset right now that's going around with you guys? Are you trying to, get focused around competition? Are you going on the mat with just more of a longer term view? And are you doing that tactically and technically, that you're just going to learn positions because you don't have competition coming up? What's the thought process right now?
I always wrestle and train with a longer viewpoint of my goals. But when there are competitions, I still work as hard as I would if there was a competition next week. And even now, when I don't know when the next competition is, I'm still going to train as hard and focus as much.
I understand. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I know Coach Riley's, he wanted me to bring up your badminton skills. Supposedly you're supposedly a solid badminton player, but, have you thought, obviously it's early in the process, but have you thought about what you're looking for in the college? I believe, and I surmise that you're going to have a litany of opportunities at the right time. Have you thought about that, or are you still kind of focused? Look, you've only competed your freshman year. Hopefully we're going to embark on a sophomore year, but have you kind of thought about that? Has that creeped into your mind?
Yeah, I've always thought about college. It's just been like a big goal to wrestle Division I. And I think the most important thing is the coaches and just the environment of the team and how hard they work and how close the whole team is and how much they want to push each other.
So let me ask you a couple questions around that. So right now, I can tell you that no matter where you go in the country, if it's Division I, you're going to find a close-knit group of guys with a fantastic coach, and they're all going to push each other. So what do you find that you're passionate about outside of school? Is there anything that when you're daydreaming, do you draw? Do you have anything that you thought that you would want to do as a professional, as an adult? And, you know, the second question to that is, how far do you think that you might want to go from, you know, mom and dad and Bayport and all the good stuff in Long Island? Are you willing to get on a plane and go to Arizona State or Oregon State? Do you want to stay more local, Hofstra, LIU, or even drive down to Virginia? What are you thinking in terms of, you know, what are you interested in, and where do you want to go as far as distance from your mom and dad?
I mean, I think they care more about how close I am. I would just want to go wherever I can go to become the best wrestler I could be. Like Iowa State are my top schools, and I'd be fine with going out there.
When we talk about Iowa State, we look at Zach Redding, right? He just won his wrestle off. I mean, that's got to inspire you. I know that, you know, you've trained in various settings with him. So, I mean, I certainly, you know, think that's attainable. You know, I know that you're close to your family. I know that your dad's been heavily involved in an extremely positive way in your wrestling. So I think it's unique that, you know, some of your age is already thinking about broadening your horizons, you know, certainly to get away and looking at Iowa and Iowa State. You know, what have you went to any camps at any college, you know, any colleges out of the state? I mean, you probably went to the local camps here, but have you went to any camps or attended anything out of state or anything in that nature?
Yeah, I used to, when I was younger, I would go with the Bayport high school team, and they'd go to summer camps at Bucknell for I think 4 or 5 days, and they had training sessions. So I got to live in that experience, and it was enjoyable.
And what are your grades like? Good grades, bad grades?
I have good grades. I had a 94 average.
Yeah, I'm sure. You look like a guy that carries everything pretty well, huh, Mike? Look at him. Could you imagine walking down to high school?
Yeah, he checks all the boxes. You know, he's you know, he's got good grades.
Taking your girlfriend, taking my girlfriend.
Yeah, he take everyone's girlfriend. Yeah,
on his
he's a handsome
alone.
guy.
Look at that hair.
Yeah,
look at that hair. Look at your hair. Look at my hairline. Look at this guy's hair. Holy
I know. What you know? Look, your trajectory has been your growth and your kind of recognition on the national scene, right? We all say as wrestlers and wrestler coaches, rankings don't matter, but look, we do like to be recognized, and I like looking at you and seeing your name on magazine and Flow and New York Wrestling. You know, what do you can you think of one match or one tournament that you said, you know what, I'm Max Gallagher. I've arrived. Like, I knew I was good, but I'm great. You know, I'm elite. You know, what could you think of a match or a competitor?
I'd say over the summer, I had a tournament where I wrestled for Team Kong, and I wrestled the top 4 kid in the country, and I beat him. And at that point, I really knew I could beat anyone. And my dad would always say that I could beat anyone. I was never as confident as him. But then once I started being top-ranked guys, I started to realize how good I was.
Yeah, I mean, talk about Kong and Coach Cialino. He provides so many opportunities. Which tournament was that down in Florida? Which tournament was that in Kong? I think you probably competed a couple of times for Kong, right?
Yeah, that was the Grand River Rumble. That was in Oklahoma.
Okay.
So what motivates you so much? I mean, for me, it was always my high school girlfriend, or, you know, the idea of a girl. So I'd run real hard. You know, what's going on when, you know, when you're in as good a shape as you, it takes a long time to be able to get tired. I'm sure on an early morning run, at workouts, if you don't have, you know, a partner that can push you. So what are you trying to, you know, what motivates you when you're not in the zone and the flow of wrestling? You know, because I know that you're not thinking about much when you're doing that, but when you actually have to put the grind in and you're thinking, what's driving you?
I mean, my main drive is always just eventually becoming a national champion and winning at that level. And every workout I'm doing, that's always in my head. And at everything I'm doing, I always think about, what would a national champion do and how could I get there?
That's impressive. You know, I've been in your room, and I know that you've obviously, Bayport, the Phantoms have had a number of all-state wrestlers. Like, one state champion that comes to mind is Steve Schoen, right? So does that motivate you to be on that wall and say, you know, first place? I know that, look, obviously that's significant. You know, third as an 8th grader, finalist as a freshman, right? I'm sure you want to be on, you know, right next to Steve Schoen and that kind of first place. Does that motivate you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, when I first got my name put on that wall after winning states, it was a good feeling knowing that my name would be in the school forever. And it does definitely motivate me.
And who is who is in your head? You know, there's some guys on the national scene. I'm sure of it that you're able to see because of, you know, what us old guys call the advent of the internet. You're able to find out what's going on all the time. So, you know, you're also growing, right? So you're like a plant. So I would say that if you're walking around at 132, I would tell you to look up instead of down, because, you know, water and light, you know, are important for a plant, and you're a growing young man. So you need food and water, and not food and water. So, you know, heavier weights and better, I'd look up. But, you know, the weight classes that are in and around your walking weight of 132, you know, is there anybody that you have your eye on that you're thinking you're going to be able to meet up in Fargo, or, you know, possibly if things were normal, a springtime tournament or Eastern States or something like this? You know, not that you want to call anybody out, but, you know, do you have some guys in mind that you want to, you know, muscle up against and see where you stand overall, or what?
There's no one specific, just anyone that's ranked high or that's accomplished a lot, and that anyone that people think would beat me. I just want to prove myself and show everyone how good I really am.
Have you looked at Annapolis yet? Do you know about Coach Colott at Navy? Have you looked into this and just his intensity and what they're building over at Annapolis at all?
Yeah, Navy's definitely been one of my top schools. I have a lot of people in my family that were in the Navy.
Oh, wow.
So I've talked to them, and it's definitely been something I want to do. And now that Kerry Colatt's there, it'll even help even more with a great coach.
Yeah, I mean, what he did, Mike, right, at Campbell, I mean, he put them back, you know, on the map, and now I expect, you know, with more resources and probably different level athletes, I think that, you know, the sky's the limit. That would be a great opportunity. You know, one of the last things I want to talk to you about, when I watch you wrestle, Max, you're able to score from every position, right? Whether you're in that on top and you're in the claw and you look in your tilt series, or, you know, you have that Max Gallagher dump, or you're on bottom, you're always looking to score, right? So do you have that mindset of, I mean, I pretty much know the answer. You know, when you're on top, you're looking to score points, right? Are you looking to ride out the clock, or, you know, you're up by 3 or 4? Are you looking to get a major or a tech? You know, what's that mindset like?
I mean, I always tell myself to score as many points as I can by the end of the match. And if I'm on top, I'm going to have a better chance at just riding a guy out if I'm trying to score. If I'm just trying to ride him out, he's going to be able to get out. So if I'm just offensive, the worst that's going to happen is he's just going to stay on bottom. But I'm always looking to score.
What's your favorite situation in wrestling? I know that in my life, I just liked hitting an inside trip. I wasn't very, you know, good at it. I go to my back, you know, 8 out of 10 times, but two times I would be.
I think he's been a little modest.
You know, what would you? Do you like being on top? And is there something that you just feels natural and you like to do, or do you find yourself just staying focused on the points, or would you prefer to be on your feet, or prefer to be on another top bottom?
Really. I'm comfortable in all positions. I think the feet is the most fun for me because there are just so many opportunities. There's so many ways to score. And I'm comfortable in every position, but I love being on my feet.
Okay.
Well, folks, we appreciate your time, Iron Max Goblin. Folks, be on the lookout. You know, whether we have a season or not. You know, Max is only a sophomore, so even without a season, he has 2 more years left, and I can't wait to watch you finish your career. I think that you're already, certainly one of the best wrestlers in Suffolk County. I think you're going to go down as one of the best wrestlers in New York State. I can't wait to watch you finish your career. I'm saddened for a lot of reasons that we don't have a season, but one of them is I'm not going to get to watch you wrestle. And, so I wish you the best of luck. I know you're certainly the pride of Bayport Blue Point, but you're also the pride of Suffolk County and Long Island. So we appreciate you, coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was great to talk.
Thank you, we'll be cheering for you, brother. Good luck.
Iron Max Gallagher. Thank you.
Okay.
Listen, Michael, Long Island wrestling is unbelievable. We're rich in history. We're rich in pride. We have 130 or so teams. We have 3 million people. We definitely contribute on the national team. But honestly, and I'm probably going to get attacked for this, but I don't know if we're as good as we think we are, Mike. Honestly, I mean, we definitely win. We definitely have.
Mike, what is you're looking, and you should. You should get beat up. I hope that you're walking around Sable and people are going to beat you up. Go to Long Beach, go to the North Shore of Long Island, where we have world champions that come out of that area. We have the best piece of land to wrestle outside of Russia. And you want to say that we think they're overhyped?
I'm not saying overhyped. I certainly think we're in the top 5, top 8, top 10, but we forget about areas outside of Cleveland. We forget about areas in Pennsylvania. We forget about California. We forget about Illinois. We forget about pound for pound. When we talk about Iowa has
my father used to tell me as a kid, don't think about what you know. And you know, I have done some thinking about things. I'm not ignorant to the world, and I've thought and I've walked those places. And I can tell you that the strip of land between the Long Island Sound and the Atlantic Ocean is some of the some of the baddest dudes that walk around there. And you're going to have to be careful to start thinking that Long Island has ignored or is ignorant to other pieces of the world in terms of wrestling. Like, we win constantly all the time. And again, you should be careful. You want to become a bad guy in a bad area. That could result in bad things.
Michael, I want to motivate us. I want to continue to motivate Long Island.
You're the king motivator.
I want to motivate, right? So I look, yes, we win. We place in Fargo. We have championships in Fargo. We've had obviously a number of Olympians. We win at Super 32. We win at Virginia. But what I'm looking at is at the NCAA Division I level. Yes, I can name probably as many as the NCAA champs we've had.
Problem is that
but it's a war of attrition. Is it because, Michael, is it because we have 3 million people and 130 schools? Is that the reason? Or are we just that much better? Is it in the water? Or pound for pound, are we better than Iowa? Are we better than Pennsylvania? Are we better than Ohio? Are we better than Illinois? Are we better than California? I want to answer.
It is.
And stop talking with emotion. Talk about data. I want to hear about data, not emotion.
Okay, well, it is in the water. That's a fact. That's why pizza and bagels are better in New York than any place else, as is the wrestling. And that should be a wrap for 40 seconds.